Diablo 4 is one of the most confusing games that I've ever played, and not because of its mechanics. It's taken me some time to figure out what I actually feel when I play Diablo, and how my brain interprets this game. I set out to make this video to help myself process these thoughts because it just wasn't making sense to me until I started writing. Where I landed through all this gave me the perspective that I needed to decide what role Diablo should have in my life. But I also hope this exploration will be helpful for others out there who may have some interest in Diablo like I did, but aren't sure what to expect. This story actually begins with a recent birthday of mine. I had a friend visiting with me over the weekend, and luckily for me, he is a fellow BGN, big gamer nerd. So instead of going out to party, we chose the righteous path and stayed up late playing video games. This was huge for me because I haven't really had the opportunity to play serious couch co-op since college, maybe, unless I'm counting playing Overcooked with my fiance. But as anyone who's played Overcooked with a partner knows, that is not serious. It's life or death.
Fuck off my Expo chef now!
So my buddy and I were trying to figure out what game we should play. It had been so long I couldn't even think of that many that offered couch co-op. But Diablo 4 had been on my mind. I knew it was on Game Pass now, and I'd heard the latest season might actually be a good time for new players to jump in, because Blizzard had apparently simplified a lot of the itemization. But I had never played a Diablo game before. I've always kind of been interested. The idea of building out a character with a unique skill set, exploring dungeons, killing a bunch of demons, and getting cool loot, like conceptually, all of that stuff appeals to me. I'm not super into the gory, dark fantasy stuff, but I thought it was worth withholding judgment on. So we figured, why not? Let's give it a try. And we had a good time. It's pretty fun to unlock the first handful of skills for your character, and you can easily experiment and think about what kind of build you might want to go for. The couch co-op is actually implemented really well in this game. Like, they were thoughtful about how the menus work, and you get to play on the same screen. It's a proper couch co-op experience. But that whole night, I was really thinking about one question in my head. Am I gonna keep playing this game by myself? Again, conceptually, the game intrigued me. And now that I was actually playing it, it did feel pretty good. But I also had this fuzzy notion about what it might be like to really get into Diablo. Part of me wanted to get hooked on this game, though I was also pretty scared about this possibility because it reminded me why I haven't touched an MMORPG since I stopped playing RuneScape like 15 years ago. I knew that endgame Diablo was all about optimizing and grinding loot, but if I'm being honest with myself, I kind of wanted to grind out a little. I don't know, it's been so long, I thought maybe this could be a nice middle ground between full-on MMO and offline single-player title. Well, I did end up playing more Diablo, about 50 hours more over the next 6 weeks. And what a strange 6 weeks it has been. A few years ago, I hosted a New Year's Eve party at my apartment. It wasn't anything crazy. I just bought some balloons from Target, and we invited over our close friends to celebrate the new year with us. It was really nice. The energy was great. The people were happy. The vibes were right. At about 10 o'clock that night, we got a knock on the door, and it was one of our friends who had just come from a different party. He brought a guest with him, who I will refer to as Steve. Now, I had only met Steve maybe once or twice prior to that. I didn't really know Steve, but Steve was pretty drunk and just not fitting the vibe. He wasn't talking to anyone, his eyes were kind of shifty, and I did not know his motives. With Steve's singular presence, my mood started to descend. I was getting more anxious, worrying if everyone else at the party was as bothered as I was about Steve. And it really took me out of the moment. Like, I'd be having a great conversation with someone, and then I'd turn around and just see Steve trying to pet my cat. And I'd be like, damn, why the f is Steve in my apartment right now? I spent a long time thinking about the right analogy to describe how I feel about Diablo 4. And this is the closest I could get. Playing Diablo is like hosting a great party where everyone seems to be enjoying themselves. But there's this uninvited guest who you can't fully escape, and he just lingers there. For the rest of this video, I will attempt to break down what the hell I mean with this analogy. And to start unpacking this, we have to begin with what Diablo does well. There's a lot to this package, and it starts with Sanctuary itself. I find the world and presentation of Diablo pretty engaging, even from its top-down perspective. And again, this is coming from a guy who's not really into the bloody horror stuff. Visually, Blizzard built a good-looking game. It runs well, there's a nice amount of diversity in the overworld with different biomes and landscapes, and while they're not exactly memorable, the environments in Diablo are nicely detailed and they're fun to kill demons in. As for the narrative side of things, I was pleasantly surprised with the campaign. I didn't really know what to expect. The cutscenes, in particular, are just impressive. They are super high budget, and it adds a critical, meaty layer to the campaign. I also found the voice acting to be pretty strong.
Oh, bloody damn hells, what do you want?
You told me to meet you here, Lorath. Remember?
Of course I remember. I'm just surprised you're not dead.
This is like my #1 immersion breaker, if not executed well. So I was glad to see Blizzard deliver on that. I won't say too much about the story itself, because it's sort of an ongoing thing with the next chapter coming in the expansion later this year. But broadly speaking, it gets the job done, despite feeling a bit unresolved in the base game. Now, for most people, they're not picking up Diablo for the world building or the storyline. They're playing Diablo because they want to massacre an army of demons. And more specifically, they want to massacre an army of demons using a character they've built with a unique set of skills and equipment, and then they want to continue to optimize that character with increasingly more powerful loot that the corpses of their enemies drop. That is the grand appeal of Diablo for the average player. And in many ways, the game delivers on this appeal. In my research for this video, I learned that Diablo 2, which came out almost 25 years ago, is pretty widely known for refining and popularizing the concept of a skill tree, a mechanic so saturated across RPGs and other genres in the modern era that it's hard to imagine a time when games didn't have them. The skill tree in Diablo 4 is the foundation of your character, and working through it is definitely one of the game's highlights. Each point you invest in your tree has the potential to shift your build and open up new strategies and synergies. This is basically where you decide how you want your character to play. Do you want to focus on long range, up close attacks, passive damage, defensive skills? The 6 abilities you can map to your skill bar will determine what moves your character can use in battle. And I found that number to be enough for my character to feel like it has its own identity. Blizzard has also designed the tree to be friendly to experimentation by minimizing the cost for respecking. At this point, I really like the Ice Mage build that I have going with my character, but I've also collected a bunch of strong equipment abilities that would work great with the fire spells in my skill tree. So recently, the game has actually had me evaluating a total rebuild of my character, just because I'm curious what playing a fire sorcerer would be like. Maybe I could be even stronger given the items I've collected so far. And speaking of items, there's a mechanic in Diablo that is perhaps more famous or infamous than the skill tree, and that is randomized loot drops. Listen to the sound that shit makes. Never in my life have I felt more like one of Pavlov's dogs. Loot is to Diablo as memes are to the internet. Without it, the game wouldn't really have a point. So much of the gameplay loop in Diablo 4 revolves around collecting stronger and stronger items to equip to your character. And as you level up and graduate to higher world tiers, which is essentially the difficulty modifier, your equipment drops will get even more unique and potent attributes. The loot starts out kind of lame when you're in the lower levels. It's basically just a primary stat and maybe a couple extra benefits. But by the time you finish the campaign and get into some higher level activities, the drops get significantly more stimulating. Not only do they start looking cooler, but they're also going to have more bonuses attached to them, which you can leverage for synergies with the skills you've unlocked in the skill tree. Ultimately, these bonuses serve as another vector of expression for your build craft. Some loot drops will have such significant bonuses or skills that they can prompt you to rethink your whole character, which I see as a positive because it motivates variety of play. So there's a lot that's working for me here. The part we haven't talked about yet is how it feels to actually play the game. What is it like to fight demons in Diablo? Well, I'll tell you what it was like for me. When you start a new character, you get a health potion with 4 charges in it. Refills for your potion are very easy to come by. Enemies drop them, you'll find them in chests, and there are also these healing wells at checkpoints which can replenish you. For the first 30 hours playing this game, through the entirety of the campaign, I used my health potion less than a dozen times. That is no exaggeration. And I was playing on World Tier 2, which is the highest difficulty you can play the campaign on. Enemies were so unthreatening that I didn't even build the habit to check my health bar until I got to World Tier 3 and started doing the post-campaign content. To be clear, I do not need every game I play to be a Souls-like. I can appreciate a more leisurely difficulty level. But to put me through 30 hours of brain-dead combat, that didn't seem right. After a certain point, Diablo gave me no reason to think critically or consider my surroundings. I just drifted into this mental state where I was effectively on autopilot, using the same combination of spells over and over again. I rarely paid any attention to what was attacking me. Part of this can be blamed on the dynamic enemy leveling in Diablo, where enemies in most areas scale to the player's level. That means, on average, fighting the same enemy at level 10 and level 40 will feel pretty much identical. It was legitimately like 3D Vampire Survivors for much of my time with the game. Just cruising through dungeons, deleting everything in my path, grabbing loot from the boss, and doing it all over again. Now, I like Vampire Survivors, and I like Halls of Torment, but these games are conservative in their scope. They know what they are, and they are not pretending to be anything more than simple, run-based, horde-killing arcade games. Diablo is pretending to be more than that, though. It does have an incredible amount of depth when it comes to the build craft, but for me, that depth has not translated to the actual gameplay. I won't sit here and say I didn't have any fun blasting through demons with my ice spells, but after 30 hours of that with no perceivable spikes in difficulty, no gameplay challenges that I had to solve by rethinking my build. No reason to learn specific enemy or boss movesets. It just became a thing that I was doing, not a game that I was playing. But I still didn't give up hope. I knew there had to be more to this game, and I expected that things would change once I finally reached World Tier 3, the Nightmare tier. To access this tier, you have to complete the campaign and a specific dungeon at the Cathedral of Light. In Tier 3, enemies have increased difficulty, your character has less resistance, and powerful champion demons can spawn throughout Sanctuary. But most importantly, you finally get access to some of the true endgame content, like Nightmare Dungeons and the Helltide. Nightmare Dungeons are essentially beefed up versions of the regular dungeons, but they scale based on the level of the sigil you use to access them, instead of just your character's level. So the higher level dungeons can actually get challenging, which was definitely a breath of fresh air. As for the Helltide, it's a time-boxed event where certain regions of the map are overrun with demons. Killing enemies in these regions will earn you these cinders, and you can use those on special chests for rare rewards. My very first death in Diablo came as I found myself in a chaotic battle against a Blood Maiden during the Helltide. I had no idea what I was walking into, but like I said, the game had given me absolutely zero reason to fear anything by that point. So I started whacking away at this boss with a handful of other players. After like a minute or two, the Maiden's health had dropped below half, and it looked like things were going fine. And then suddenly, to my disbelief, I got hit with some kind of fireball and just died. It honestly felt so anticlimactic. I wasn't even paying attention to my health bar, and I realized there's like no real consequence for dying. You just respawn close by and your armor loses some durability, which costs like 5 gold to repair. The only real loss is that if you die in the Helltide, your threat level resets and you drop some of that special currency that gets used to purchase rewards from the Helltide chests. Not that big of a deal. I messed around with these activities for a couple weeks, and the whole time I was still waiting for that moment when it would suddenly make sense. That moment when I would finally realize I needed to change my strategies, react to my enemies, play the game. I have not experienced that moment yet. To me, it still feels like I do Diablo whenever I log in. But despite all that, I still find myself somewhat entertained by this game. Maybe it is much closer to an MMO than it leads on. Like, can anyone really say they play RuneScape? I spent an entire summer as a kid cooking thousands of lobsters at the same fire pit just so I could earn one special cape. That was not a game. That was a f***ing 9-to-5 job. But my prepubescent brain still derived pleasure from it. At this point, we need to talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. When we play a game because we genuinely enjoy its gameplay, or we find satisfaction in the challenge of its combat or puzzles, or when we get pulled in by a story that captivates us and makes us want to keep playing, those are all examples of intrinsic motivation. The desire to play comes from within. Extrinsic motivation is just the opposite. It refers to motivation that comes from without, from external sources. It's the only reason I played baseball as a kid. My mom had to bribe me with Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster packs after my games because I had zero genuine interest in playing that sport. Great game design depends on striking the right balance between building intrinsic motivation in the player and rewarding them with extrinsic motivation. It doesn't have to be 50-50, but it does have to work in the context of the game's mechanics and other elements. When I look at Diablo 4, I don't see that balance. What I see is a model that is built almost entirely around the addictive qualities of randomized loot. Do you remember like an hour ago when I was talking about Steve? This is what I meant by the uninvited guest problem. When I play Diablo, despite whether my brain feels entertained in the moment, I struggle to shake the reality of how I'm actually spending that time. Steve is always hovering in the corner of the room, reminding me that the only reason I'm still here is because Blizzard has commandeered my dopamine circuits. If I try to block out Steve, I can forget for a little while, but the illusion always fades. I mentioned at the top of the video that this game confuses me, and now I know why. Diablo 4 confuses me because even though I know it depends on extrinsic motivation, and even though I'm conceptually okay with that being the core element of the game, I still don't feel great when I spend 3 hours grinding the same enemies for slightly better loot. And I think that is actually the key, for me at least. Because once I downloaded Diablo to my Steam Deck and started doing just a couple nightmare dungeons before bed, I felt fine with that. And I think it's because that's exactly how I play Vampire Survivors or Halls of Torment. I realized that the longer the session is with that type of game, the higher the chance that I notice the uninvited guest. So if I keep my Diablo sessions to just 30 or 45 minutes at a time, and I play on a smaller screen with the graphics set a bit lower, now I'm treating the game like what it is, and not what it's pretending to be. If you're still here, thank you for hanging to the end. I know it took me a little while to land the plane. And for the folks watching who play Diablo 4, either casually or more regularly, I am curious, do you struggle with these same feelings? Or am I just missing a critical dimension of this game? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like on your way out. See you guys in the next one.